Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Are You Listening with Abigail. I'm really excited to get into this. I'm basically going on holiday in a few days, so I am now batch recording 2 episodes back to back. So if I look exactly the same in this episode and then the next one, you know why. But I'm going to jump straight into it. We're on a tight schedule today, and I don't have a trip drink because it's quite early. It's actually at 11:15, but it just seems a little bit too early to kind of be banging one of them out. So if anyone does want to get the trip drinks, the CBD drinks, the magnesium drinks, which are absolutely my favourite thing ever, I will leave the discount code in the description. But let's jump straight into it today. So, as I said, I go on holiday in 4 days. 4 days, holiday of a lifetime. I am going to Mauritius and I am so excited. But on my weekly thoughts list this week, I have written about, do I even want the proposal pressure? And it's kind of obvious where this has come from. You know, I'm in my late 20s. We've been together, me and my partner have been together for like about 3.5 years. And we are going somewhere really romantic on a really expensive holiday. So everyone naturally has been like, shall I buy a hat? Do you think it will happen? So I kind of wanted to talk about that pressure, and yeah, I just thought it'd be a bit of a relatable one to a lot of women in their late 20s, or if you've just been with your partner for a long time, I suppose. I think ultimately my very honest response is that, and as I've said before, I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable without sounding kind of too cryptic or giving, you know, my whole life away, because obviously some kind of privacy is still important. But my honest response I kind of have written down is that after the last few months, I'd be very, very surprised if it happened. But people don't see that side. They just see, you know, we've been together for 3.5 years, we're nearly 30, we're going on a big holiday, so that equals proposal. But I think it's funny how we just assume that the next logical step in someone's life, or we assume the next step in someone's life without actually knowing what they've been through or where their relationship is. And I kind of wanted to talk about that. And this isn't like a depressing episode. This isn't an episode to be like, guys, stop asking me that. I just wanted to discuss it because I know that I, for a fact, have been the person on the other end of this, where I've had clients come in and be like, do you think you'll get proposed to, or friends, things like that. And it's weird being on the flip side of it. It's a weird feeling, and I thought it would always be like a nice feeling, and it is, because it's exciting, but it brings up a lot of weird feelings. So let's get into it. So I think there's a lot of pressure that comes in your late 20s especially, or like I said, if you've been with your partner for a long time, or maybe if you're in your early 30s, to get engaged, and it becomes an expectation after just a certain period of time. You may hear my stomach rumble in this. I haven't eaten yet, so I apologise for that. It kind of becomes just an expectation after a certain length of time or age or whatever. And it just brings it back to, which I've spoke about before, that kind of invisible timeline checklist of you're together for a while, you move in together, you get engaged, you get married, you have kids. And I think being, like I said, on the tail end of that expectation, it feels weird. It's like people are just waiting for a show and for you to tick through that checklist rather than actually caring. Not that they don't care, but I suppose caring what is happening privately, or just, it's not that they care, but no, not that they don't care, but it's a weird one to explain, I think. But like I said, I've asked myself the same thing in the past, so I get it. It does come from excitement. But like I said, now being on the tail end of that, it just feels really different. It's a weird one. So I think the reality of engagement and things like that we kind of forget about is being really candid. For our circumstances, the holiday we are going on is really expensive. And life is expensive. Proposals don't always fit the timeline of what people expect. And I know you don't have to spend a lot of money on a proposal, on a ring and things like that. I know that. But it still costs money. So we're spending a lot of money on this holiday. And to be really frank, my partner did when we booked this holiday. It's actually really funny. He was at work and, telling people, we booked to go to Mauritius, we're doing this. And instantly, especially all the girls in the office were like, she's going to be expecting a proposal, are you going to propose? And I think he hadn't even thought anything about it. And he actually said to me that evening, he was like, Abigail, I'm going to be really frank with you. A few of the girls have brought up the fact that you may be thinking I might be proposing, doing this, that and the other. And I'm just saying the holiday has cost a lot of money. I don't want that expectation to be there because I don't want you to be disappointed. And it's really, my response to that automatically was, are you double bluffing me? And it kind of turned into this bit of a joke. But I do think that relationships, and especially engagements, my honest opinion about an engagement is that the engagement shouldn't be a surprise, but how it happens and when it happens should be. And I was actually talking to a client about this the other day, that if you are someone, or you are a guy listening, or I don't know, and maybe you haven't been with your partner, or maybe you've been with your partner for a really long time, and maybe engagement and stuff just hasn't been something you spoke about, I wholeheartedly believe that it should be something that you have conversations about. Like I said, there's probably going to be a few people listening to this being like, what on earth are you talking about? An engagement should be a surprise. Like I said, how it happens and when it happens should be a surprise. But if you have been together for a while, or not even that long, and your partner is thinking of proposing without even knowing that's what you want, maybe you don't know you want marriage and things like that, it shouldn't be a surprise. But I keep saying over and over, how and when it happens is what should be the surprise. But you should have come to an agreement that, yes, we want to get engaged. Yes, we want to get married in the future. We're both at the point we're ready for this. Then the excitement of it can build, and then it can come, which is another reason, like I said, don't get me wrong, I'd be very surprised if it did happen, but that's why I don't think it will happen, because although we have conversations all the time about things like that, and he knows that I want to get engaged, I feel like we haven't had the conversation to solidify the fact that that's kind of where we're at right now, which is why it would be a very, very big shock, or that's basically why I don't think it's coming. Like I said in the last episode, I don't have a goal of buying a house right now, and I don't want to spend a crazy amount of money on a wedding. But like I said, we're still spending money on things that we like at the moment, such as we pay quite a decent amount of money on our rent and where we live, and doing things and going to concerts. And I say going to concerts, like we don't go that often. We went to a concert, say like last weekend, but doing things like that we don't mind spending money on, as well as say our holidays. So yeah, I just think an engagement costs money, and I think people forget that. Also, real life just isn't Instagram highlight reels. Sometimes you're working through things as a couple, or focusing on financial priorities that, engagements don't actually fit there at the moment. So I think you need to acknowledge that there's pressure versus excitement. I know that it comes from love when, people and family members and friends ask you, shall I be buying a hat? Do you think you'll get engaged? Obviously, a lot of family members, friends, things like that, I know it comes from excitement and love and wanting the best for you, but it does make you overthink sometimes. Is there like everyone waiting for this? Yeah, there's this weird pressure that's hard to put into words. I went to a wedding a few days ago. We just went to the evening with my family, and my partner came with me. And, there was a lot of questions of, will you two get engaged? Because the cousin that was getting married, they're our age. And yeah, it kind of now feels like, is that right? Is everyone sitting and expecting this to happen? I'm trying to not put the pressure on that right now. I also think, like I said, sometimes you're working through things as a couple naturally. And again, to be very frank, the last few months have been difficult, and I think relationships have hard seasons, and that's not necessarily like you're having a rough patch, you're going to break up and all of that, but there's natural shifts through your relationships as a couple when big things start to happen and both or one of you are going through something, or both of you are going through something. And although things are good now, and like I say, I don't want this to sound like, oh my God, we're having really bad issues. Like, it's not even that. It's just the fact that as a couple, you go through phases of your relationship. And like I say, things are really good now. But it would still really shock me if it happened. And I think that's okay. But that also makes me think, like when you go through them seasons and things build up and you get through these things as a couple, that is what kind of, I think, starts to set you on the right path to naturally pivot towards the big things such as engagement. But if you don't go through them things, I also think, how do you know that this is the right person and you're meant to work through these big things and see how you work through them as a couple to see if it's the right decision to get engaged and get married? But I also think it also steals from the present moment, just thinking ahead about engagement and stuff. It's like, instead of being excited about Mauritius and our holiday, I think it's kind of now making me think, or people automatically aren't just happy and excited that we're going on this big holiday. They're happy and excited because they're like, oh my God, this may be the time that you get engaged. And it does kind of take that, it takes the big feeling and excitement away from, this is a really big holiday, we've been saving for this and we're really, really excited. I'm really sorry about my stomach, by the way. And like I say, I've been really bad about this. I 100% have said this to couples and clients and things like that. And yeah, it's just weird being on the other end of it. I also want to kind of reframe the narrative of it, that like engagement doesn't always equal success. It's a milestone, yes, but it's kind of not the milestone. Right now, the milestone for us is, like I said, we kind of have got through these big things as a couple. And now we're getting to go on this really beautiful holiday and get to enjoy each other and get to enjoy the time on holiday. That for us right now is the milestone, rather than this could be an engagement. And every couple's timeline is different and unique, and it doesn't make it any more or less meaningful if it does happen or not. Just because it's Mauritius, it's a beautiful beaches and it's really romantic and it's this and it's that. Also, like, do you know what's really funny? Something that's come to my head that I haven't written down in my notes is, what if you also don't want this big grand gesture as an engagement? What if you didn't want that on holiday? What if you did want it just kind of sitting in your living room? What if you did want it just, I don't know, over dinner or something like that at home? So people are putting the pressure on it being in somewhere like Mauritius. And what if you've never wanted something like that and you've always wanted something really chill and really you? And what if that does start to pivot your mind, being like, well, maybe I do need this big romantic gesture, but your partner knows you want something really, really small and romantic, and you guys, are you then going to be disappointed if it does happen in that way rather than on this big romantic beach in Mauritius? I don't know. Just a thought I hadn't actually written down. I think I personally would rather it be in the right moment for us, not a box to tick, not because of our age and not because we've been together for so long, not because of the location we're in and things like that. And I think this is just a reminder that people are always only viewing things from the outside, not the journey that you're in as a couple or what happens behind closed doors. And if something like us going to Mauritius is a big celebration of things have been tough, and this is us getting to celebrate that, not an engagement, not anything else, then that is still as amazing as coming home with a ring. And I just want to kind of circle it back. Like I said, these 2 episodes may be just very slightly shorter because of the time frame of things. That doesn't make them any less meaningful. But I'm going to circle it just back to no, I don't think anyone should buy a hat. The funniest thing is maybe I could come home with a ring. I'd be very surprised. Very surprised. But that's also fine. I think we also need to acknowledge that most of the time people are just excited for you. It does add pressure, and it does sometimes maybe add a bit of pressure into your relationships, but it does usually come from love, and it doesn't mean that you owe anyone your milestones on a schedule rather than your own timeline. The truth is like I said, I don't think and I don't know if and when it will happen, but I do know that I'd rather be right. I'd rather it be right than rushed, and rather it be right rather than just you're in the right place to do it. And that's the part that no one sees when they're asking you that question. So, yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Like I said, it's a short and sweet one, but I really think it's important and it's very relatable for me right now. I know it's relatable for probably a lot of people right now. And yeah, when you listen to this, I will already be in paradise. But I thank you so much for listening. If you are listening on Spotify, please leave a review, please leave a comment, whatever you can do. Share it with people that you think would like this episode or find it relatable. If you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, please like, comment. It really, really means the world to me, and I love making episodes and I love talking really candidly about things like this. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next episode.